Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. Well, I hope you all had a happy holiday, and a lot of you probably ate some things you feel bad about now. So we have an expert on today. She's been on the show before and on some of our summits. Her name is Dr. Uma Naidoo, and she has a new book coming out today. It's called Calm Your Mind with Food. We always ask you, if you are going to get the book, to please get it the first day or the first few days. It really helps the author out when people do that and rally together. And please welcome her to the show. Now you can hold the book up.
Thanks, Chef AJ. It's always great to talk with you. I love your show.
Oh, thank you. Well, that cauliflower, purple, my favorite color, purple cauliflower, that looks
Yes,
a lot like a brain to me.
that was the whole idea. It could be interpreted as a purple cauliflower or purple sprouting broccoli, which I tasted the first time on a trip to the UK. And now I'm seeing it show up in farmers markets, which is great. And, as nutritious one or the other because they're rich in those anthocyanins. So,
Nice.
um,
Well, people need to know you're not only a Harvard trained physician, you also are a chef. So you know of which you speak.
I love the fact that I went to culinary school and love the food that you prepare as well. I would love to do more of it, but I do work with my patients around just selecting and writing through my books, just easy recipes that are ones we can make. I think in general, people know what healthy eating is, but that action step is often really hard for people.
Absolutely, especially when it's so easy just to go through a drive-through and get, 2,000
Drive through
calories for, $1. So
the drive-through, and also the ultra processed foods are marketed, in a way that it's convenience, it's easy, and busy families, think, well, that frozen whatever it is going to be, a better, fast and easier for me. And so I think we need to rethink that as real solutions for people.
well, it's interesting because you're talking that there are certain foods that can calm your mind, and those foods that you mentioned, I think they actually can have the opposite effect on many people. They can actually make them anxious, depressed, and not
That's right.
well.
Correct. So the ultra processed foods, the fast foods, the junk foods, the extra sugars in foods, they are really damaging to our brain, but they're also not great for our mental well-being. Once in a while, if you had a sweet treat, that's different, but you can't eat those every single day because that just is not going to be healthy for your brain. Or your metabolism, or your body, or any parts of it, but starting off with your brain.
Well, and I agree with you 100%. And many people are having dessert like for all three meals. I mean, a lot of what people think of
Yeah,
as food is really dessert. Breakfast cereal,
it,
children's
it's
breakfast cereal.
is like dessert. I think that's an excellent point. I was speaking to someone today who was commenting that when they have guests from overseas, how even the savory foods are so sweet for these individuals. And I think that that's absolutely true. Our foods tend, even our savory foods, are hyper sweetened, or sweeter than other foods. And the other thing is that for the most part, people um, don't realize they're consuming that amount of sugar. And even as something like a product that has added sugars, you don't realize even something as simple as ketchup, has added sugars, a salad dressing. Yeah,
And it doesn't need to be there. We're both
it
chefs, and
doesn't need
we
to
know
be.
that we can
Yeah,
make marinara sauce, we can make salad dressings. And if you did
all
need
of it.
this, you could put something like that's naturally sweet, like balsamic vinegar or a date. I read once
That's
that
right.
there's more sugar in a half a cup of a traditional marinara that you would find like a jar
Yeah.
at the store than in two Oreos.
Interesting. I didn't hear that statistics, but I would totally believe it because even when you taste it, it is super sweet. But also, I think we need to understand that even when you're preparing it in a restaurant, we don't need to be, we don't need to add all that ton of sugar. So I think it comes back to those basics of being healthier for your brain health, and really realizing that the foods that you may be worried about your waistline are actually impacting things like anxiety. And research showed, Chef AJ, that as we came through the pandemic, a study published in Lancet showed that anxiety has increased by 25%. It was always the most common condition. It got worse during COVID. Processed food sales also got worse during COVID, and anxiety is at an all-time high. So this book is meant to actually provide hope that you have the power at the end of your fork. You can make these choices. You can, skip the drive-through and try out some simple recipes at home, or make healthier choices when you are in the supermarket. Just those healthy whole foods, like the cauliflower, like the broccoli. Those are the things we want to start with, and you can have those frozen. If you don't want to, clean the whole cauliflower, you can get frozen cauliflower. Just make sure there's no added syrup or sauce or sugar in it, and that's an equally healthy option, because the vegetables are flash frozen, so they're pretty healthy.
Absolutely. I've read that frozen can be every bit, if not more nutritious than fresh, but it seems that most people aren't, other than maybe you and me and a few of the viewers, aren't eating very many vegetables or even whole foods for that.
No, neither vegetables or whole foods. And also, the food industry takes off on different fads. So now that cauliflower is having a moment, now it's in pizza crust and it's all over the place. And the reality is, those are still highly processed, so unless you're making it from at home with, shredding the cauliflower and doing that whole process, which is a little more complicated, it is still a processed food.
Absolutely. You mentioned your patients. I'm curious because people always want to know when we have a
Yeah.
wonderful doctor on the show. Are you in private practice? Could someone see you if they wanted to?
Right now, I'm not in private practice. I'm attached to the hospital, and we are building out more resources at the hospital, because the good news is that nutritional psychiatry is something more people want to do and hear and obtain. So we're trying to have more clinicians train and study this so that they can offer these services.
Great. I know you've been conducting research on how the impact of foods can help regulate anxiety and calm our mind. Can you talk a little bit about what you've
Yes.
discovered?
Yes. So, turns out that a few things are true. Our metabolism, so how our body burns and stores energy, and really how it functions, um, it is coded in a certain part of the brain, which is the same area that are hotbeds for anxiety, the hippocampus and the amygdala. So, one of the things I want to share with your audience today is that when we are eating poorly, it's going to drive your anxiety. And if you're noticing that you've not been eating that well, and you're also struggling with sleep, because anxiety can show up in different ways. You can stop sleeping properly, you can wake up with a knot in your stomach, you can feel an increased heart rate and discomfort during the day. It can be many different things. So that is one of the things we want to be careful of. The other is that you know, it, you know a lot about gut health, but that gut-brain connection is so critically important. So if we are again eating the ultra-processed foods, it's actually upping the inflammation and dysbiosis in the gut. And that means that you are setting yourself up for dysbiosis, and you are setting yourself up for an increase in mental health symptoms, especially anxiety. I've seen this where, individuals make a change in their diet and have an uptick in anxiety. A few weeks later, they don't even realize it. They think it's something else going on in their lives. So it's empowering to know that we can really make an impact through how we're eating, and that can impact how we calm our mind, how we feel better.
Yeah. I've heard you say that there are women that maybe didn't experience anxiety earlier in life, but as they reach
Yeah.
perimenopause and beyond, they do.
Mhm.
Why is that, and what can we do about it?
It's true. There's so many hormonal fluctuations and changes that happen as we reach perimenopause and then menopause. And women are vulnerable this way, in the sense that, their hormones are wreaking havoc, and so often they see a primary care doctor, and they are offered, a medication like a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, which is really not fair for them, because no one has explored or asked them what is going on. Has something changed? Is something different? And that type of thing, I think is important for us to understand. So one of the things I like to tell people about is, when you're reaching that phase of life, maybe cleaning up your diet even more than you might have been becomes important, because eating those anti-inflammatory, healthy whole foods, the colors of different beautiful vegetables and fruits and berries, are those phytonutrients that will help you. The antioxidants and anti-inflammatory properties will help calm down that gut. Now, the gut is those gut microbes, the trillions of microbes that live there. They're dealing with sleep and circadian rhythm, which is your internal body clock, vitamin production, hormone production, sleep, immunity, infections, mental health, and more. So by eating that way and taking care of them, feeding them fiber they need, which we can only get from vegetables, and beans, legumes, lentils, whole grains, by feeding them fiber, you are actually really making sure that they are fending off inflammation. And I've had patients where we tweak the diet towards even more whole foods, more plant-based foods, more antioxidants and plant polyphenols. They really start to help reduce their symptoms. So it's something to think about. There isn't an easy cure. The other thing, though, is hydration. We can feel much more anxious if we're not drinking enough water. So a calming tea to sip throughout the day, as well as a bottle of water or a glass of water that you're sipping on, is very, very important. And refill it a few times, of course.
Well, it sounds to me that what's good for the brain is good for the gut, and pretty much everywhere.
Correct. That's true. Good for the gut is good for the brain and vice versa. But those two organs seem to be so linked in terms of mental well-being. But the gut is also performing so many other functions that it makes sense that if you're eating to take care of your gut health, you're going to really improve other things. I've had individuals improve their skin conditions, lose weight, feel obviously the mental health symptoms, but in addition to that, other things where they are feeling better as well.
So your first book, you came on the show once to talk about it. This is Your Brain on Food. I haven't received that book yet. I'm sure I'll get it any minute.
Yes, it's on the way.
But I'm curious, is Calm Your Mind with Food kind of a continuation of this book where it left off?
It's an interesting question. So what I did with the second book is, in book one, we went through the different mental health conditions, from depression, anxiety to PTSD, OCD, and more, all different conditions, and the foods to embrace and foods to cut back on. And what happened during the pandemic, my first book, This Is Your Brain on Food, was released in 2020. And what happened is that all I saw during the pandemic was more cases of anxiety and people just feeling so incredibly anxious, including all ages. So I felt that that was important to offer solutions for people, because it was what I was seeing. And what Calm Your Mind with Food does is it dives much deeper into anxiety, which makes sense because it's the most common condition. The other thing it does is it breaks it down into the science. So if you're a nerd like me and you want to look at why, inflammation and neuroinflammation and immunity and metabolism and all those things impact anxiety, you can read part one. But if you're just interested in the foods and the protocol, then go to part two and part three. It has helpful things. It's meant to be a guide to really help you along. So it has helpful things like an anti-anxiety shopping list, a list of protocols, and recipes. So
that's fantastic.
It's an easy way to get started.
So I don't consider these two substances food, but some people do, and they're very common in our culture. I don't imbibe in either of them. But what about things like coffee, caffeinated coffee, and alcohol? What effects do those have on anxiety for people that suffer from it?
Yes, it can be problematic for people with anxiety. But in my clinical work, what I find is people have different tolerances, because going back to the gut, our gut is almost like a thumbprint for each one of us. Coffee on its own actually has plant polyphenols. It's the caffeine that's a problem. So if they have coffee, I ask them to get a clean coffee, meaning find out where it's manufactured, that type of stuff, and also don't add junk to it, and have it early in the morning and not too much of it. But if you have anxiety and you drink a sip of coffee and you feel jittery, it's not for you. With alcohol, it's the same thing. Clean cocktails if you consume alcohol, but if it drives you anxiety, then this is not something for you. And I think that around the holidays, like we've just had, the coffee drinks are all on, I like to say, on steroids, because they're even more sweet, they have even more flavors and even more calories and just unhealthy stuff in it. And the marketing is really great. But same thing with alcohol. There's the holiday cocktails, and they often had a lot of added sugars, added liqueurs, added juices, and simple syrup, which is simply sugar. So be careful with those. And if they trigger your anxiety, then they are not for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of people take both every day. They start their day with caffeine, they end it with alcohol.
And that's right.
What effect do those have on the gut? Because I know that the gut health is as important to you as the brain health.
It's the brain health. So with coffee, coffee is actually not, because of the plant polyphenols, there's some level of protection there. Like I said, it's often the junky ingredients that are added to coffee that can be disruptive. With alcohol, that's different. There's definitely an effect in the gut. There's definitely an effect in other parts of the body, and also depends on how much you consume. So drinking, if you do consume alcohol, drinking in moderation, being super cautious, having clean cocktails is the way to go. And with any habit, making sure that you can keep it in check, because these are potentially addictive substances.
Absolutely. And a lot of people say they feel anxiety in their gut, how,
Yes, yeah.
yeah, a lot of times,
Yeah.
when you're scared, how do you calm an anxious gut?
Mhm, mhm. So calming an anxious gut actually starts off honestly with how you've been eating. And if you are experiencing that, if you're experiencing that, you know, anxiety in your gut, those pangs, those terrors, those feelings like that, then take a pause, take a moment. There are a few non-food things to do, and there are a few food-related things to do. The fun thing is that there's some fun, some cool things you can do. Like I have in my book, a recipe for lavender Play-Doh. And so it's making your own Play-Doh. It's an only non-edible recipe in the book. It's really meant for you to have something to work your hands, to like a stress ball, but you're just making it from a simple dough. You should also learn a breathwork exercise, because that's very helpful to use when you're having an anxious moment. You can learn one of these. Having a meditation practice, so something that calms your mind, is super helpful to know, and super helpful to kind of pull out of your pocket when you're having that moment. But then in terms of foods, it really is. I like to ask people, what was an unhealthy habit that stuck with you after the pandemic, and some people it's eating some type of ice cream at night, or next to a glass of wine, or having cookies and chips and crackers that they stocked up on. So with all of these, you have to really be wary of, this is now the time. If it's bothering you, this is the time to kind of make a positive change and say, look, it's time to rework this. Can I make you can actually make ice cream from fruit. You actually don't need all the junk ingredients that go into it.
They have
You
machines
can
specifically for that now,
That's
actually.
right. Exactly. That's right. You can make it entirely from fruit. I've had an absolutely delicious avocado ice cream where you're getting, the benefits of the fiber and the nutrients, from avocado, which, by the way, has magnesium, something that a lot of us lack, and low magnesium is associated with anxiety. So it's a great one to have and to use. So start there. Start to step back on that habit. Try to see what you can do to change it, and it's a really good jumping off point.
Yeah. I mean, I have had a machine since I'm 19 called the Champion Juicer, where you literally freeze ice cream and you just run it through the chute and it tastes just like delicious creamy
Well, right,
sorbet. So it's
right.
actually been around for a while. Are there certain foods that are, if you had a list, like, I don't know, the top 3 or the top 10 that are especially known for helping people with anxiety? And conversely, are there foods that are really known for making anxiety worse in people that already
Right.
suffer with it?
Right. So let's start off with the foods to step away from. You won't be surprised by this one, but it's the ultra processed junk foods and fast foods. Fast foods not only have additional ingredients, but even the French fries have like added sugar in them. They engineered to be that way to trick us into cravings, and they are hyper palatable. The other big group is the processed oils. A lot of people cook with processed seed oils, and these are just not healthy for multiple reasons, but they're also pro-inflammatory. The added sugars, that's not going to be a surprise, but added sugars actually affect your brain. So the um, added sugars in foods is something we want to be super careful about as well. The hydrogenated fats, the trans fats in foods that are shelf stable, some shelf stable bakery goods, you can buy them now and use them in 2 weeks. Those are the ones we want to be careful about because they have the wrong types of fats in them. And then another one is artificial sweeteners, which there's some newer ones which may be a little bit healthier, but the older ones in diet sodas and things are just not good for us. So, be careful of those foods. But the foods that you can step into are foods that are rich in B vitamins, things, that are the polyphenols and things like berries. You always want to be eating a kaleidoscope of color, is what I call it, from the fruit and vegetables that you're consuming, because they also have antioxidants and anti-inflammatory properties. I want people to be thinking about iron, because many women and children are deficient in iron, and you can actually get the highest level of plant-based iron from dark chocolate, so extra dark natural chocolate has iron. And what you want to do is pair it with some form of citrus, like a piece of orange or a clementine, because that helps the absorption, and it's a great flavor profile too. Um, then, things like choline from legumes are super important. Vitamin C, which you can get from lots of different citrus fruit, but also red bell peppers and kiwi are some of the highest, and vitamin D as well. Now, vitamin D is interesting because many people in the Northeast could be deficient in vitamin D. You can spend 10 minutes in the sun and get about 80% of your vitamin D for the day, then put on your sunblock or your sunscreen. But you can also get it in other foods. So these are easy ways to kind of get you started on this journey. There are hundreds of foods in the book, but mostly it's about choosing your anti-anxiety shopping list, choose the foods that appeal to you, the recipes that appeal to you, and kind of follow along on the protocol.
Well, if I understanding you, it sounds like things that are found in nature, whole foods, are going to be health promoting, whether to the brain or the gut, and things that are
Yeah,
processed, ultra processed, not so much.
exactly correct. And what I did is I divided up. I talk about the 6 pillars of anxiety, and I'll share some of them with you today. Exactly the first one is eat whole. We've actually done 2 today. Eat whole, be whole, because it's about eating that orange and skipping the store-bought orange juice, which is stripped of fiber and has a lot of added sugar. And another one is avoiding those anxiety triggering foods. We just went through that list, and we actually talked about the kaleidoscope of colors that I want people to think about. Because in nature, there's so many beautiful hues and colors, and each of them really represents this amazing amount of um, the critical phytonutrients which we need, not only for our gut microbes, but also just for our bodies and brain.
I think people are going to be happy to hear that you recommended chocolate as a food. I think that people will be very happy to do that. You talked about that there was a connection between immunity and anxiety. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So, the 70% of our immune system is in the gut, and many people don't realize that. So, the food that we eat is impacting our immune system as well. And so, in the book, I break down in a simple form, just the different types of immunity and how we can eat in an impactful way to help that. The other factor is that the metabolism in our bodies, is in the same area of the brain as where our anxiety centers are triggered. So just being aware that eating healthier, because we know that about 93% of us have some form of metabolic issue, may not be, obviously not the full-blown syndrome, but certainly have some issues. So just starting to really clean up your diet a little bit. None of us eats a perfect diet, but if we start to do that, we could actually see an improvement in anxiety.
How do foods that promote inflammation affect the brain and maybe anxiety as well?
Yeah. So the foods that increase inflammation, they interact with the gut microbes, and the breakdown products of what the microbes interact with these unhealthy foods are actually more toxic to the gut. So there are good microbes and bad microbes, and the bad ones are fed by these unhealthy foods. And so what happens is their breakdown products are more toxic. These toxic products damage the single cell lining of the gut and start to cause over time conditions like leaky gut, which is intestinal permeability, and once that starts to happen, it is definitely problematic for your gut. But once there's leakage of these toxic substances into your circulation, it also reaches the brain and other parts of your body. So gut inflammation ultimately leads to brain or neuroinflammation. Something important for us to understand. People hear this buzzword inflammation a lot, and I want them to understand that, if you fall and scrape your knee, if you have an injury, then it needs the body to jump in and have, acute healing. then that is a form of inflammation that our body needs. But here we are actually talking about a more chronic, insidious inflammation, and one of the main causes is how we eat. So this is it's critical for us to understand that inflammation can be driven by that list of foods that we spoke about.
Yeah. How do things like stress and anxiety affect cravings even?
Yeah. It's people use the term stress eating, and it's actually pretty real in terms of what they describe about the psychology of eating and how they describe that they might choose foods. So some we'll talk about it. I also say that one of the tips I have for people is drink a glass of water, because our hunger signals and thirst signals operate from a very similar part of the brain. And so it might be that you are thirsty when you feel hungry. So drink a glass of water. That could also help cravings. But when people are stressed, they talk about sort of not only stress eating, but reaching out for these foods that help calm them. Unfortunately, the foods that we don't usually choose carrots and broccoli when we're feeling stressed. And this is herein is the issue, because when that happens, the underlying sorry one of the things that we need to understand is that when we are stressed, like maybe have an argument with a spouse, or have a bad day at work, a colleague, the microbes actually respond to stress. And this is really fascinating. It's almost like they have feelings, and so we talk about gut feelings. All the microbes probably have some feelings, and they start to react and respond. You won't necessarily feel it immediately, but over time, if you continue to be stressed, that is going to evolve and change them and what they do. So these things are just hugely important. One of the things we want to think about for conditions like this level of stress is, what can we do? My patients with anxiety will often, some of them will say, I get on a treadmill and I do 20 minutes of workout. I listen to music. I kind of try to let go of that tension and that angst, and I feel better. Others will go for a walk. Others will meditate. Some will do a breath work exercise. Some almost way to trick their mind into getting over this a bout of anxiety. So everyone almost has to find their own solution through experimentation with different methods, like a breathwork exercise, a walk, 20 minutes on the treadmill, whichever helps them to offset. And some people, it's just deep breaths, things like that. So it's not easy, but I think how we are eating is completely contributing to those moments as well. And hydration is key, because when we're dehydrated, we can present as anxious, or we can even have panic.
Yeah, I think in this country, a lot of times it's just medication first, and we're not even
Yes,
looking at anything else that could be helpful.
correct.
You mentioned how frozen fruits and vegetables, being flash frozen, are completely fine. They can be every bit as healthful as fresh. But what about organic? Does it have to be organic to have the anti-anxiety benefits that you talk about in the book?
I think that it is one of the things I always want to bear in mind is, I'd much rather someone eat a whole food, um, if they have access to that, and if they can't afford the organic, or they don't have supermarkets that stock that. I would still they much rather eat an actual food than a processed version of it. But that being said, the Environmental Working Group puts out a couple of lists, the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. And this can help guide you in the supermarket as to which foods to try to get organic. Strawberries is, by the way, one of the top of the list usually that you need to, or you want to buy organic. So think about getting frozen strawberries, which actually last longer, unless, they tend to be fragile. But check out those lists, because they're pretty easy. And the ones that you can kind of save your money on is the Clean 15, where you don't have to buy them organic. In terms of the anti-anxiety properties, the cleaner your diet, the more likely you are to succeed with this. But that being said, if you're having a frozen pizza versus an actual piece of cauliflower or some other whole meal, it's going to be so much better for you than a version of that. So have faith that it can help.
Absolutely. You have a chapter in the book on macronutrients, a chapter on micronutrients.
Yes,
You want to talk a little bit about those and how those can
yes.
affect our brain health and anxiety?
Yes. So, the interesting thing is that these are words that people often get confused by what the different what these are. So one of the things I wanted to help people have is like to demystify these different nutrients. So one of some of the important micronutrients that we want to be thinking about are things like magnesium. Magnesium you can actually get from things like avocado, and many of us, it turns out, may be low in magnesium. Macronutrients are the fat, the carbohydrates, and the proteins. They are the biggest components of the food that we eat, and we want to have these different components in our diets. I do think that for carbohydrates, we want to think of the more complex carbohydrates that you get from things like cauliflower versus the carbohydrates you get from pasta or from bread or the types of donuts that we typically think of. So we want to eat these in balance, but also create an anti-anxiety nutritional psychiatry plate that has really good foods in it. Then there's the different types of fats, and the carbohydrates like we talked about. Then when you get to the micronutrients, they're kind of fun and interesting because we think about things like magnesium, iron, vitamin C, the B vitamins, which are critically important. We want to think about the absorption, and I wanted people to have sort of a guide as to what these different nutrients are and why they're important for brain health, but specifically to help calm the mind. And then, one of the things I do is offer really out of the box solutions for what we can do. So many people drink tea, but they don't necessarily experiment with passion flower tea or lavender tea. And one of my things is, eat the blues to beat the blues. So the blues from, anthocyanins and berries, the blue in passion flower tea, and those types of ideas that, will really up your game on the anthocyanins and the antioxidants that you're getting from certain interesting foods.
That sounds like it'd be a great t-shirt or mug. Eat the blues, beat the blues.
Beat the blues.
If I ever get you a present, I will definitely get you.
Thank you.
You talk about leptin in the book. Maybe you could talk about what it is and why it's important, especially for people that have mood or anxiety issues.
Right. So leptin is a hormone, and it's the hormone that really it kind of tells us when we are full. It regulates our appetite. And so when you eat dinner or lunch and you have completed it, you sort of feel, well, you feel satiated, and leptin is basically giving the right signal for you to stop eating. But unfortunately, what happens when we're eating poorly and not really sticking to or trying to eat more healthy foods and a healthier diet, leptin starts to malfunction. And when it malfunctions, it stops telling you that you are satiated, that you're full. And so here you have your plate of food, and all of a sudden now you need a second or third round of food, or you need more snacks, or you need something else to fill you up after dinner is over. So being understanding that, because we know now metabolism and anxiety are connected, being aware of how you are managing potential leptin resistance, or the fact that we want leptin to be functioning at its peak, that is so important as well. So the through line is the more times that we're eating whole foods with specific foods that are helping anxiety become really what is so key.
Right. Thank you. You have a recipe in the book for shiitake bacon. That is very intriguing.
Yes. I'm glad you like it. I tasted at a plant-based restaurant, and I really loved it. I thought it was so clever. And so I asked them how they made it and tried to make an adaptation of it for, just having something, you know how we love different shapes and textures and colors, and it's a great way to do that.
Yeah. What are some of the must-haves for people's kitchen?
Well, I'll tell you one of the things that I think about for my own fridge. So in terms of food, um, I think that because I also think about in terms of equipment, but for food, I would say lots of leafy greens. Making sure that you have them stocked every week. Some form of berries. My favorite are blueberries. And by the way, wild blueberries, sometimes you get them frozen, have twice the amount of antioxidants, so they're definitely worth that extra punch. Some form of protein that you like. My favorites are tempeh and tofu. Non-GMO organic tofu. So I eat some little bits of that, but I really love my beans, lentils, legumes to get my sources of protein. And I often, if I'm short on time, I'll get canned chickpeas, canned black beans, canned organic, rinse them out and use them. And then, other things that I want are the healthy fats from things like avocado. Those are critical. And I always have my nuts and seeds, which are my source of, short chain omega-3s from flax seeds, hemp seeds. I even make a hemp milk. There's a hemp milk recipe in the book. And that really is to help, so that it's not only a good source of short chain omega-3s, but it's a great way to have a nut milk as well.
Very nice. Do you have any of my favorite kitchen appliances in your home, like the Instant Pot pressure cooker or the air fryer?
Yes. I love those. I don't know, maybe we have slightly different brands, but I love the Instant Pot. I love to cook my lentils in there. I make dals in there all the time. Soups, stews, it's excellent. And I love an air fryer because it opens up the possibility of the crunchy foods like zucchini sticks and, sweet potato fries, carrot sticks for kids, lots of things that can be crispy without using any type of oil, which is absolutely amazing to me.
I have this little thing on my desk. I got it at a health fair, but it made me think of you. It's like a brain. And I
Oh,
guess
I
you're
love that.
kind of,
It's
I guess
squishy.
it's one of those anti-anxiety squishers, as long as
Yes.
you also gave us these things called sensory sticks that you can feel with your
Oh, I
fingers.
love it.
That,
Well, this is fascinating. Did you know that I have one non-edible recipe in the book, and it's for lavender Play-Doh?
that sounds like
And
so much fun.
it's just something, it's exactly that principle, something you can kind of move your hands with and squish around. So I
And
love that.
essential oils like lavender are also very calming.
Very calming. And you can switch out the recipe. Say you like lemon balm, the scent of lemon balm, then you just switch out the essential oil that you add. And most people just associate, lavender with the spa experience or something like that. It's very calming in all domains, including in tea. So the lavender Play-Doh is really just a way to really express like us having a stress ball, but made from food.
Nice. I once heard it said that exercise is the most underutilized antidepressant and anti-anxiety medicine. So how do you recommend somebody get started?
That I think it's doing something that you enjoy. You could start off with walking. You could build up on your steps. You could start with a treadmill. You could maybe start a Zumba class, or you could start working with a trainer who can hold you accountable and say, I'm at the beginning of this. I just need to get started and learn some really good exercises to build my muscles, to do some cardio, to do some stretching, and all of this. So I think I think you have to do it until that feeling kicks in that, what, this feels good, because endorphins are naturally released when we exercise. So you want to be able to continue encouraging yourself to get to that point where you can you are starting to feel good, and you then want to do more of it. So it's definitely a challenge. Definitely a challenge.
Yeah. When we were researching this book, were there any foods that surprised you as being beneficial for anxiety that you might have thought, I mean, because greens are always seem to be the answer for just about everything, but were there other foods?
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, extra dark, two things, extra dark chocolate, and the other one was ashwagandha. Because with ashwagandha, it's an ancient herb used often in Ayurvedic tradition, and it's pretty bitter. So it's actually great to consider as a supplement because it has a good amount of evidence for anxiety. And the third one is saffron, that helps both mood and anxiety. And anecdotally, a lot of my patients who have kids with anxiety have tried saffron or ashwagandha, but you want to speak to the pediatrician about that as well. But they generally pretty easy to use, and they have good evidence for calming.
Yeah. Do you recommend in general any kind of supplements or vitamins that people take in
Yeah,
addition to the food?
definitely. I think that we none of us eats a perfect diet, so supplementing with something, it could be vitamin D. Certainly in the Northeast, we could be short. Magnesium is another one. Have your doctor check your levels, because many Americans are short on magnesium. Iron is important because there's such a high rate of iron deficiency. So if you're feeling weak, fatigued, tired, wondering if you might have anemia, it might be a good one to check, and your doctor will check your different panels on the iron levels. So there are several, that I think certainly fill a nutritional gap that we need, and I think it would be good for you.
Yesterday was a holiday and a lot of people probably ate too much and too much of the wrong things and they struggle often to get back on track. What advice do you have to help people take the first step or the next step?
The first is no regrets, because studies have actually shown that when you're feeling badly and you're remorseful and you're upset, it actually has a different impact on how you absorb food as well. So what I want people to do is reset. Just wake up and say, "Hey, I had a great holiday yesterday. Yeah, but too many pieces of, well, maybe it was pie or something else. But today it's a new day. How do I get started with the new me today? Having indulged yesterday, and what am I going to have for lunch, or what is that healthier version of food that maybe I'll make a nice pot of soup for myself, with lots of veggies in it, and something that will be calming for me, satiating and enjoyable. Maybe I'll have some healthy snacks, a couple of pieces of fruit, maybe make myself a veggie bowl or a salad, but something that will allow me to reset my mind and feel like, you know what, this is today's a new day, and how am I going to feel better?
Yeah. I think what a lot of people do is if they overindulge or binge, then they restrict and then they get into this vicious cycle of binge, restrict, repeat.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, congratulations on the new book. I wish you
Thank
every
you.
success. We have both in
Thank
the
you.
chat. Yeah, of course. We have the
Thank you.
it's beautiful
Yes, sir.
cover. Well, it's funny
Thank you.
because purple and green are my two favorite colors. So it's
Really? I love it.
very visually appealing. So we have both in the chat and the show notes for where people can get it. Do you care where they get it, whether it's on Amazon, a bookstore, whether they buy the
I,
Audible or the book
um,
version?
I'm going to ask people to really reach out for the hardcover, and to support your local bookstore, buy it online if that's easier for you. But definitely want to encourage people towards the hardcover book. And I think that, I just appreciate the support, Chef AJ. Always enjoy talking to you, and love talking to your community. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And in addition to the book, is there a place that you like people to connect with you? Perhaps it's
Yes.
Instagram.
I'm on Instagram, and actually on all of the social media channels at DRUMANAIDOO. And check out my newsletter at umanaidoomd.com. You can also buy the book there, by the way. But at umanaidoomd.com, you can sign up for my weekly newsletter. And I talk about a new food every week, and give you the facts and the rundown.
That's so great. Thank you so much, Dr. Naidoo.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Chef AJ. Good to see you.
Absolutely. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back tomorrow for Chef Ron Russell. Take care, everyone.